The House Oversight Committee has released the 141-page transcript of its interview with Devon Archer. He's the former business partner of Hunter Biden. Archer testified that Hunter was selling the brand in his business dealings with foreigners and that it was his father, then Vice President of the United States, who brought the most value to the brand. But Republicans and Democrats are divided about the significance and meaning and impact of that hours-long interview. We're going to talk with members of Congress from both sides of the aisle. We're going to start in Massachusetts with Congressman Jake Auchincloss. Welcome back to Fox News Sunday, Congressman.
Thanks for having me back on.
Okay, so this week we talked to former Baltimore police commissioner who himself got caught up in some tax problems. He ended up pleading guilty, and he ended up going to jail for a situation that was the amounts were much lower, but the crimes charged were about the same with Hunter Biden. So I want you to hear what he has to say. He takes responsibility, but adds this.
They should be held at the same standard as me or someone else that unfortunately had to go through this. But again, like I said, I want to hold myself accountable, and I'm sure that millions and millions of Americans across the world, yeah, they want fairness in the justice system.
So the prosecutors in these two cases were the same. The crimes underlying were about the same, although the amounts much higher with Hunter Biden. No jail recommendation for him. Jail for this gentleman who went and served his time. How do you convince the American people there is a fair justice system? It is not two-tiered.
If Hunter Biden committed crimes, Hunter Biden should face justice and accountability for those crimes, which, by the way, is a sentence that I have heard very few Republicans say about Donald Trump for much more massive crimes. This focus, this obsession, I would say, on Hunter Biden is really just a whopper of whataboutism, because the Republicans are trying to deflect, to diminish, to defend Donald Trump from the grave crime of conspiracy against the Constitution of the United States. They want the American public to focus on anything other than the man who swore to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution that I upheld as a Marine officer and a member of Congress, that he instead tried to overturn our very democracy. And we don't have to accept that premise. The American public deserves justice for Donald Trump, and they also should expect that Hunter Biden face justice as well for the mistakes that he made.
Yes, because we're spending plenty of time on the show talking about President Trump and the trouble that he's in, so we want to focus on Hunter here. The Wall Street Journal says this: you can call Hunter, Burisma, China, and the, quote, big guy pedestrian influence peddling, but in the context of a former president's legal problems, the Hunter plea bargain has become more than that. It is a public test of legal equity for the government that put these Trump indictments in motion. Do you get that half the country is skeptical about what's happening at the Justice Department?
I get that Donald Trump is sowing doubt in our legal institutions, which has been his tactic for 50 years. But this isn't some business lawsuit in New York City. This is about Donald Trump trying to overturn the Constitution. Of course, Hunter Biden should face justice. No one in this country is above the law, not the son of the president, not the former president. Everybody should face accountability. And what we are seeing here is an apples and oranges comparison, where everybody wants to talk about Hunter Biden because they don't want to talk about the far graver crime of Donald Trump.
Okay, but we are talking about that. But we want to talk about Hunter as well. Devon Archer testified this week. Democrats and Republicans saw his testimony very, very differently. Here's something from House Oversight Chair James Comer. He says there's more to come.
We produce bank records. We produce evidence. Everything that I've said about criminal activity by the Bidens, I can back up with evidence. Yet one member of the House Oversight Committee on the Democrat side can come out and tell a narrative to the press, and they run with it.
Okay, so Comer says they're going to talk to more witnesses. He says this week they may release more bank records. All of this comes as a new Gallup poll shows this headline: the majority in the U.S. say that the Biden administration's ethics are subpar. They cite 55% as the number there. Is there anything that would be presented to you that would make you say, okay, there's some red flags there, maybe the Biden shouldn't have been involved with some of this?
I approach every issue with an open mind. I put country before party, which is something I wish my colleagues on the other side of the aisle on January 6th would have done. And of course, as I have said repeatedly, if Hunter Biden committed crimes, he should be held accountable for them. What we saw from the Archer testimony was a very unflattering portrait of Hunter Biden's judgment and business dealings, but no material involvement from Joe Biden himself. Again, no material involvement from Joe Biden himself. It is smoke, it is smoke, it is smoke that the Republicans are trying to gin up, and yet no fire. And they're desperately trying to redirect Americans' attention away from the most important indictment in American history, which is Donald Trump's.
Okay, I think Americans have the ability to look at both these cases at the same time, digest them and make their own decisions. I want to walk through one of the examples Republicans cite quite a bit. They talk about the fact that Hunter Biden was on the board of Burisma in 2014. Then spring of 2015, there was a dinner here in Washington, D.C. It included Burisma officials. The vice president went by. Devon Archer says he stayed and had dinner. Shortly after that, there was a discussion that these Burisma officials wanted U.S. officials to come to Ukraine because they were under investigation by Viktor Shokin there, and they were concerned about that. So after that, a top official within Obama and Biden administration meets with Hunter, talks about Burisma, then goes and meets in the West Wing with Vice President Biden, then calls Hunter. After that, we're told that there's going to be a trip by the vice president to Ukraine. Hunter Biden gets an email from the Burisma people saying, oh, we just want to confirm this trip is actually happening. He goes in early December of 2015. They want Shokin gone. Here's how the vice president then described what happened in that December 2015 meeting.
Guys, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a got fired.
Burisma wanted Shokin gone. He was gone. That's circumstantial evidence. But do you understand how some people have concerns after that chain of events?
It's a very cherry-picked set of evidence there, because Archer himself has said that it may not even have been in Burisma's interest to have that prosecutor removed. Archer himself said that Hunter Biden was really trying to pitch the illusion of access. Again, there's all of these threads of conspiracy that the Republicans have been unable to tie together in their political investigation designed to embarrass the president. And what we need to do as elected officials in this country is step back, stop trying to interfere in investigations for political ends, and allow the law and the facts to weigh, which is what is happening right now in the indictment of Donald Trump for conspiracy to defraud the American public. And what we need is Republicans and Democrats to stop trying to sow doubt in our legal institutions.
Yeah, we all want those to move forward. I mean, I think people of good faith want to see justice applied across the board uniformly, and we will follow all of these trials and keep people informed, and they can make their own decisions. So, Congressman Auchincloss, we always appreciate your time. Thank you.
Good to be with you.